Hello and welcome to the presentation of the methodology. ASSET's project methodology is based on the EWF methodology for the development of new international qualifications in manufacturing. The methodology comprises a design loop. Its first step is associated to the definition of the job function of the mentioned profile and the associated activities. What will the person be able to perform after receiving training? The expected learning outcomes for the profile. What are the knowledge and skills needed to be acquired after training? After that, the proficiency level is assigned, based on the level of the responsibilities and autonomy associated to the professional profile. This last step is done ensuring an alignment with the European Qualification Framework, EQF. Since this is an iterative process, after accomplish all the mentioned steps, there is a pilot that allows to verify and fine-tune the qualification. EWF uses a modular approach in their training, which allows for the competence units to be assessed individually before obtaining a qualification. Therefore, this approach avoids duplication of contents between qualifications and the possibility to reuse competence units across different qualifications. There are benefits for the additive manufacturing professionals from this flexible and tailor-made training that is both aligned with their needs and industrial requirements, such as easier progression within the qualification, avoiding relearning, and enhanced opportunities for changing their career paths, as they don't have to go through the training and assessment of competence units they've done previously to obtain a new qualification. There are also opportunities for other educational systems, like address emergent technologies which can be easily integrated at national level, and also design individual learning pathways that might be automatically recognized. The qualifications are also aligned with the European credit system for vocational education and training in terms of their workload, which is divided in contact hours, self-study, and assessment. EWF Qualification Systems Framework has 7 proficiency levels that are organized in statements of general descriptors in terms of the knowledge, the skills, and the autonomy and responsibility. This framework allows EWF qualifications to be recognized and transparent, as well as to link with the European Qualification Framework, which allows a linkage to national qualification frameworks. It is of the utmost importance to guarantee the alignment with the industry requirements. The sectoral stakeholders should be involved at European level, but with inputs from stakeholders of the different countries with expertise in technology, process, industry, and the sector. In order to maintain the quality and transparency, EWF has in place a quality assurance system that is based on harmonized qualification guidelines. These guidelines are the same throughout every country, ensuring that the training provided by the authorized training bodies or ATBs is the same in terms of curricula. Also, the ANBs or authorized national bodies who are responsible for the assessment part of the training as external evaluators or assessors give the same opportunities to every trainee and ensure that the assessment is the same for every trainee independently of the country as well. This is done through a database of questions. Randomly launches the questions for the assessment tests. Let's start by putting concepts into practice. The qualification development is a step-by-step process starting with surveys targeted at the industry in order to assess their needs and gaps. After, the results are carefully analyzed by EWF team aiming at defining the qualification professional profile, which combines a general description in terms of the main objective and general responsibilities and tasks that define the knowledge, the skills, and the autonomy and responsibility of the professional. EWF qualifications are designed using a top-down approach. So after assessing the skills needs through the surveys, it is drafted an initial concept of the professional profile by answering the question, what is the general description of this professional occupation? After, inputs from the project partners and external companies and experts are required, given the relevance and importance of involving the stakeholders in the process. To ensure it's aligned with national requirements, industrial requirements, the fast evolving technology, vet and higher education, different levels of skills, considering that the particularities for the defense sector greatly impact the development of the qualification. Therefore, these need to be mapped out before diving into the definition of the profiles, as they play a huge role in several stages of the methodology, not only on the development phase, but also in the validation and reiteration phases. After this step, EWF team treats the information for internal approval through the designated EWF working group, before the validation phases through workshops, other projects, external partners, and at ISO, SEN, and AWS level, before the final step, which encloses the final competence units and qualifications. The definition of the professional profile, using a top-down approach like we saw previously. The professional profile is defined in terms of the job function and job activities of the professional, therefore leading to its proficiency level. After, the learning outcomes, knowledge, and skills are aligned with the professional profile and the proficiency level, and the workload is established. Now let's answer to the question on how to design qualifications. As we mentioned previously, EWF uses a top-down approach, starting by answering to the question, what is the general description of this professional occupation, to get the professional profile. After, let's add 3 more questions. So the next one is, what job functions respond to the general description? The general description, as we also saw previously, is defined within the professional profile. And by answering to the second question, we define the major functions of this professional. And then after, we ask the question, what are the necessary activities to comply with each job function? And by doing so, we reach the basic functions of the professional. And we can answer to the last question, which is, what is the required knowledge and skills to perform these activities, and define our learning outcomes. And by going through this process, we reach our competence units. By answering to these questions, we define which competence units will be part of the qualification. So, in summary, the professional profile offers the big picture about a certain profession. It is a general description containing the main objectives of the profession in terms of general responsibilities and tasks, similar to a description included in a job offer. And after defining the professional profile, we define the job functions and then the job activities. The job functions are core tasks inherent to the exercise of the professional activity, and the job activities are the sub-function or activity that is mandatory to undertake a job function and that has a regular occurrence within the professional activity. So for example, let's use the profession of a teacher. In terms of professional profile, we can say that it is expected for this professional to teach or lecture maths in primary classes. In terms of job functions, let's say prepare the classes, prepare exams, exercises, and to motivate the students. And in terms of job activities, it is expected that this professional is able to select dynamic activities and use a variety of pedagogical approaches in its classes. A competence unit is, like we saw previously, part of a qualification, and the training and assessment is done separately of the assessment of the qualification. Therefore, a competence unit can be specific to a single qualification or common to several ones. And within competence units, we have two types, functional and cross-cutting. The functional ones are directly linked with at least one job function, and in which the knowledge and skills achieved will be mobilized in specific job functions and related activities, while cross-cutting ones are transversal because they are not directly linked with just one job function, since the knowledge and skills achieved will be mobilized across several job functions and activities. To define our functional competence units, we need to answer to which skills and knowledge have to be mobilized to perform a given professional task or activity. So this competence unit is connected to the job function, job activities, learning outcomes in terms of skills and knowledge, and then the workload. And this is how we built this competence unit, by defining all of these steps. In terms of a cross-cutting competence unit, this is only linked to the skills and knowledge required to perform several activities. So we only define the skills and the knowledge in terms of the learning outcomes and the contact hours. Each competence unit is described using a learning outcomes, which are a statement of what a learner knows, understands, and is able to do on completion of a learning process. Learning outcomes are defined in terms of knowledge, example, subject covered, and skills. Additionally, the competence unit contains information about the required workload, meaning the estimation of the time learners typically need to complete all learning activities, proficiency level, and assessment criteria. Regarding the assessment, this is also harmonized because it encloses a common guideline with specific criteria to correct and evaluate practical exercises, case studies, written exams, or reports. And this guideline is common independently of the country for every single qualification. A defense qualification system will be a harmonized scheme for the education, training, and examination linked with a defense qualifications framework that will have per reference the European qualifications framework. This framework will be applicable to all qualifications, which are a formal outcome that result in a certificate, diploma, or title of an assessment process which is obtained when an individual has achieved the required learning outcomes. Qualifications are structured in competence units, which are components of qualifications consisting of a coherent set of knowledge and skills organized in learning outcomes that can be assessed and validated. Therefore, learning outcomes are defined in terms of knowledge, skills, and autonomy and responsibility. And having that per base, and also the project partners and external companies and experts inputs define the proficiency level in order to design the curricula in terms of context, expected learning outcomes, assessment criteria, teaching and learning activities, so it can be implemented and reviewed every 2 years, where alterations will be made if necessary. And having that per base, and also the project partners and external companies and experts inputs define the proficiency level in order to design the curricula in terms of context, expected learning outcomes, assessment criteria, teaching and learning activities, so it can be implemented and reviewed every 2 years, where alterations will be made if necessary. As for the competence units, the design loop can be summarized as followed. So after the definition of the job profile and the proficiency level, which will lead to the specific activities and tasks of the professional, the learning outcomes in terms of knowledge and skills will be defined. And these learning outcomes will lead to the learning and teaching activities, the ones to implement and the ones that will need to be fine-tuned. And this process will lead to the assessment. And once the assessment is defined, the workload in terms of contact hours, self-study hours, and assessment hours can be defined as well. After this, the focus is on the actual delivery and assessment. Learning and teaching activities that can be implemented to train people that enroll in this kind of training. Assessment methods to be used to assess whether the learning outcomes were achieved and the associated workload as a recommendation. There is a link between the workload and the attribution to ECAVET points. So, 25 hours of the workload, including contact hours, self-study, and assignments, equals 1 credit or point. We hope this presentation was clear and enjoyable, and thank you so much for your attention.